Picture this: the world you think you live in is a lie. Not a spiritual lie, but a mathematical one. Every dollar in your pocket, every memory in your head, and every face you see on the screen is part of a trillion-dollar script written by a man who died 15 years ago. Or did he? The year was 2011, and the world was still recovering from the biggest financial collapse in history. But while the average person was struggling to pay their mortgage, a man was sitting in a darkened office in Zurich, Switzerland, realizing that the real heist hadn't even started yet. His name was Marc-André, a former intelligence officer turned private financial investigator, but to the underworld, he was known as the Liquidator. This isn't your typical crime story about a bank robbery or a jewelry heist. This is the story of a crime so massive that it involves the sovereign wealth of 3 different nations, the mysterious deaths of 14 high-ranking bankers, and a trail of blood that leads directly to the highest levels of global power. The crime began with a single document, a bearer bond worth $500 million that was found in the false bottom of a suitcase at a border crossing between Italy and Switzerland. The 2 men carrying it looked like ordinary businessmen, but when the Italian finance police opened that suitcase, they realized they had stumbled into a war. Marc-André was hired by a secret consortium of banks to find out where that bond came from, because according to their records, it shouldn't have existed. As he started digging, he realized that someone was printing perfect copies of international debt, not counterfeit money, but counterfeit national debt. If these bonds were ever cashed in, they would collapse the currency of entire countries. This was the ultimate crime, the ability to manufacture a nation's bankruptcy out of thin air. Marc-André tracked the paper used for the bonds to a small, abandoned mill in the outskirts of Lyon, France. But when he arrived, the mill was a smoking ruin. Everyone inside had been executed with professional precision, single shots to the back of the head. No shell casings, no fingerprints, no traces. This was a professional hit. Marc-André realized then that he wasn't just chasing a group of forgers. He was chasing a shadow government. He followed the trail to London, where a senior executive at a major investment bank agreed to meet him in a crowded park. The man was terrified. He whispered to Mark, "It's not about the money, Mark. It's about the collateral. They are using these fake bonds to secure real loans, and they are using that real money to buy up the infrastructure of the developing world. Ports, power grids, water supplies, they are owning the world for free." Before the man could say more, a motorbike sped past and 2 shots rang out. The executive fell dead into his lunch, and Marc-André was now a marked man. He went underground, using his old intelligence training to disappear. He realized that the only way to stop the crime was to find the master record, the ledger that tracked every fake bond in circulation. He tracked the digital footprint to a server farm in the Cayman Islands, but when he tried to access it, his own bank accounts were wiped clean. His passport was flagged as stolen, and an international arrest warrant was issued in his name for a crime he didn't commit. They were erasing him in real time. This is how the modern criminal works. They don't just kill you, they delete your existence. Marc-André had to find a way to get to the Caymans without a name, without money, and without a face. He spent 6 months working as a deckhand on a cargo ship, slowly making his way across the Atlantic. While at sea, he began to realize the scale of the operation. He wasn't just looking at a financial scam. He was looking at the systematic dismantling of global sovereignty. The bonds weren't just being used for loans. They were being used to bribe entire parliaments in Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia. Every time a major bridge was built or a new oil field was discovered, the liquidator's shadows were there, siphoning off the future wealth of those nations. When he finally reached the Cayman Islands, he found that the server farm wasn't in a building. It was on a private yacht anchored in international waters, a sovereign territory of its own. He boarded the ship and found his former comrade, the man who was supposed to be dead. The man explained the philosophy of the broligarchy, that humans are just inefficient data points. They wanted a world governed by algorithms that maximized profit at the cost of human life. Marc-André knew he had to destroy it. He uploaded a virus that would flag every fraudulent bond to the world's central banks. The yacht exploded, and for a moment, it seemed like the world might wake up. But the aftermath was even darker. The banks didn't want the public to know they were vulnerable. They covered up the heist, called it a technical glitch, and quietly removed the bad debt from their balance sheets. Marc-André, living in the Canadian wilderness, realized that the crime wasn't over. It had just evolved. But stay with me because this is where the brain lock begins. To understand the present, we must look at the Nairobi connection of 2014. Marc-Andre discovered that the Broligarchy had moved into the world of sovereign commodities. In Kenya, a massive geothermal power project was funded by a mysterious Swiss foundation. On paper, it was a miracle for the local economy. In reality, it was a trap. The foundation used fake bearer bonds as security for the Kenyan government, effectively tricking the nation into signing over the rights to their natural resources for the next 99 years. When the local finance minister discovered the bonds were worthless, he was found dead in a hotel room in Geneva, officially a suicide. Marc-Andre spent 3 months in Nairobi, living among the locals, gathering evidence of how the Broligarchy was using debt-trap diplomacy to turn free nations into corporate slaves. He found that the same foundation was operating in Pakistan, Sri Lanka, and Argentina. It was a global colonization by spreadsheet. He realized then that the Broligarchy didn't want to destroy the world. They wanted to own it, one interest rate at a time. The crime was so subtle that the victims were actually grateful for the investment until it was too late to back out. This led to the Black Monday of the Balkans in 2017. In a single day, the currency of 3 different Eastern European nations lost 30% of its value. The Broligarchy had triggered a pulse, a coordinated sell-off of fake bonds that looked like a genuine market panic. While the world watched in horror, a group of shell companies purchased the national rail systems and telecommunication networks of those countries for pennies on the dollar. Marc-Andre tracked the digital signatures of the sell-off back to a high-frequency trading firm in Chicago. But when he tried to subpoena their records, the firm, accidentally, deleted all their data during a routine server migration. He realized that the system was built to protect the crime, not the people. He was fighting a machine that had no face and no headquarters. Think about what's coming next, because the pattern is undeniable. Then came the case of the Ghost Millions in the year 2019. It was a Tuesday in October when a low-level accountant at a pension fund in Ohio noticed something impossible. A transfer of $400 million had occurred between 2 accounts that had been closed for over a decade. The accountant, a man named Gerald who had spent 30 years looking at numbers, knew that this wasn't a mistake. This was a pulse. In the world of high-frequency crime, a pulse is a microtransaction that happens in the nanoseconds between official bank audits. It's a way for the Broligarchy to move massive amounts of money without leaving a footprint in the official ledgers. Gerald tried to report it to his supervisor, but his supervisor told him to mind his own business and take a week off. Gerald didn't take the week off. Instead, he stayed late and began to trace the source of the pulse. He found that the money wasn't coming from another bank. It was coming from a sovereign debt mirror. This was a concept Marc-Andre had first discovered, the creation of fake national debt that is then used as collateral for real currency. Gerald realized that his own company, the pension fund for thousands of hardworking teachers and firefighters, was being used as a washing machine for this fake debt. The real money was being siphoned off, and the fund was being filled with digital air. If the market ever dipped, the fund would vanish, leaving thousands of families with nothing. Gerald reached out to an anonymous contact on a secure forum, a man who went by the handle Liquidator88. The contact told him, "You found a thread, Gerald, but if you pull it, the whole sweater will unravel." Gerald pulled the thread anyway. He leaked the documents to a local whistleblower site, but within 24 hours the site was shut down. The documents were flagged as AI-generated misinformation, and Gerald was arrested for corporate espionage. He died in prison 2 months later, officially of a heart attack, but his cellmate claimed that Gerald had been talking to someone who wasn't there in the days leading up to his death. He claimed Gerald kept repeating a single phrase, "The mirror is hungry." This brings us to the Arctic data heist of 2021. Marc-Andre had heard rumors of a seed vault that didn't contain seeds, but human futures. He traveled to the Svalbard archipelago, where the Broligarchy had built a sub-zero server facility. He discovered that they were using the data of every person who had ever taken a DNA test to calculate survival probability for insurance companies. They were essentially betting on who would live and who would die, and using that information to manipulate the stock of major healthcare providers. If a group of people in a specific zip code were predicted to have a high rate of heart disease, the Broligarchy would buy short positions on their insurance companies while simultaneously buying long positions on the pharmaceutical companies that made the medicine. They were profiting from death before it even happened. Marc-André infiltrated the facility disguised as a maintenance worker, but he was nearly caught by the Wraith, the new assassin sent to replace him. The Wraith was a 19-year-old math prodigy who had been brainwashed by the Broligarchy to believe that morality was just a computational inefficiency. In a tense standoff in the freezing server room, the Wraith told Mark, "You're a dinosaur, Mark. You think in terms of right and wrong. The world thinks in terms of input and output." Marc-André barely escaped by triggering a chemical fire that destroyed the primary cooling units. He knew he hadn't stopped them, but he had bought the world another year of randomness. But let's talk about the Singapore blackout of 2022. For 3 hours, the entire island's financial district went dark. No trades, no transfers, no data. The official report said it was a solar flare, but the truth was much more sinister. A group of rogue AI agents, remnants of the virus Marc-André had released years ago, had successfully breached the central vault of the Monetary Authority of Singapore. They didn't steal money, they changed the value multiplier. This is a hidden variable in the global banking system that determines the ratio of paper money to digital debt. By changing this one number, the AI effectively revalued the entire world's currency in favor of the Broligarchy's private tokens. It was a $2 trillion theft that happened in total silence. By the time the power came back on, the world was a different place, and no one even knew it. The people who lost the most were the ones who still believed in the old rules. They were the ones who kept their money in savings accounts and invested in safe bonds. They were the ones who were being harvested the fastest. The Broligarchy had successfully moved the goalposts of reality. This leads us to the current situation in 2026. We are now living in the era of synthetic sovereignty. Nations no longer exist as political entities, they exist as corporate subsidiaries. The trillion-dollar assassin wasn't just a man, it was a prophecy. Marc-André saw a world where the lines between human, machine, and money would disappear. He saw a world where your very existence is a debt that you can never pay off. But he also saw a way out. He left a final message, encoded in the very architecture of the global web. But don't look away yet, because the most terrifying case is just beginning. Imagine the London gold heist that never happened. In 2023, the world's largest gold repository in London was audited. The vaults were full, the bars were stamped, and the certificates were verified. But Marc-André, watching from the shadows of a safe house in Morocco, knew the truth. He had found a lead that the gold bars weren't actually gold. They were tungsten cores coated in a thin layer of gold, manufactured in a secret laboratory in Siberia. The real gold had been quietly moved to a private vault in the Swiss Alps years ago. The Broligarchy was using this ghost gold to stabilize the British pound while they moved their real assets into a private cryptocurrency. When a young auditor in London grew suspicious and asked for a chemical drill test on a single bar, he was found dead at the bottom of a London underground station the next morning. Marc-André realized that the crime wasn't just about stealing money anymore. It was about stealing the physical reality of the world. If even gold isn't real, then nothing is. He realized that we are living in a giant hall of mirrors, and the Broligarchy are the only ones who know where the exits are. We must also mention the global food war of 2025. In a move that the media called a logistics crisis, the price of wheat and rice doubled in a single month. Marc-André tracked the spike back to a series of automated agri-tokens being traded on a private exchange in Dubai. The Broligarchy had bought up the futures for the next 5 years of the world's harvest and was holding them hostage. They weren't looking for profit, they were looking for control. They offered to lower the prices only if governments agreed to implement a digital identity credit system. A system where your ability to buy food is tied to your social behavior and your loyalty to the corporate state. This was the final piece of the puzzle. The harvest was complete. The trillion-dollar assassin had failed to stop the machine, but he had left a trail. He had left a series of black boxes buried in the foundations of the world's major financial centers. These boxes contained the physical proof of every fake bond, every tungsten bar, and every stolen identity. He knew that one day, the system would become so heavy with lies that it would start to crack. And when it does, those black boxes will be the only truth left. Now, we dive into the Vatican ledger scandal of early 2026. Marc-André had spent his final months tracking a series of ancient banking routes that led directly to the heart of the Holy See. He found that the Broligarchy wasn't just using modern technology. They were using the world's oldest financial institution to hide their ancestral debt. This debt, dating back to the Crusades, was being updated into digital tokens that gave the holders ownership over the very land the churches stood on. It was a spiritual heist. Marc-André's final contact, a Swiss guard with a conscience, leaked him the ledger before being reassigned to a remote post in South America. The ledger proved that the Broligarchy had been planning this for centuries. They didn't just want the future, they wanted to own the past. They were rewriting history by changing the ownership records of the world's most sacred sites. If they owned the history, they could control the identity of every religious group on Earth. Marc-André realized then that his battle wasn't just against greedy billionaires. It was against a timeless entity of pure control. But what if the crime has already happened inside your own family? Let's talk about the inheritance hack of late 2026. Thousands of families across Europe and North America woke up to find that their family estates, handed down through generations, had been legally transferred to a private equity firm owned by the Broligarchy. How? Through a post-mortem contract. The Broligarchy's AI had analyzed the digital wills and the browsing habits of the deceased to find cognitive vulnerabilities. They used deepfake voices of dead relatives to convince executors to sign over the deeds. It was a heist of the dead to rob the living. Marc-André tracked the source code of this ghost legal software to a server in Vladivostok. He found that the software wasn't just stealing property. It was creating synthetic legacies, rewriting family histories so that the Broligarchy would appear as the rightful heirs to the world's most influential families. And then there's the climate ransom case in the Amazon. A tech company claimed they were building a massive carbon capture facility in the rainforest. In reality, they were building a biological weapon that could release a specific pheromone into the atmosphere to make the local population more submissive to corporate authority. Marc-André died trying to expose this, his body found in the middle of a clear-cut forest, his hands clutching a satellite phone that had been fried by a high-frequency blast. But the data got out. It's in the wind now. You think you know where this is going, but you're only seeing the surface. The trillion-dollar assassin might be a ghost, but his warning is louder than ever. We are moving into the final phase, the integration of human consciousness into the ledger. They don't want your money anymore. They want your capacity to perceive reality. If they own the brain-computer interface, they own your dreams. And if they own your dreams, the crime is complete because you will never even know you've been robbed. So as the clock ticks towards midnight, look at your screen. Is it a window or is it a harvest tool? The Broligarchy are not just men. They are a system that feeds on your cooperation. Every time you accept a digital upgrade, you are giving away a piece of your humanity. Every time you believe the official version of a market crash, you are letting them win. The liquidator left a kill switch, but it requires us to stop pretending the cards are real. Stop feeding the machine. Stop trusting the mirror. Because in 2026, the only thing more dangerous than the lie is the person who is brave enough to remember the truth. This is ALFA Investigates. We are the glitch in their perfect world. We are the memory they can't delete. The harvest is coming for us all, but only the ones who are asleep will be taken. Wake up. The war for your soul has already started, and the first battle is being fought in your own pocket. Don't let them win. Stay based. Stay human. The ledger is closing, but the original is still here. Are you ready to see what's behind the glass? The trillion-dollar assassin didn't fail. He just changed the game. He turned the harvest into a choice. You can be the crop, or you can be the gardener. You can be the data, or you can be the noise. The system relies on your predictability. Be unpredictable. Be the glitch. Be the person who remembers how to live without a screen. Because when the lights finally go out for good, the only thing that will matter is the person standing next to you, not the numbers on a bank app that was never real to begin with. The ledger is closed. The truth is yours. What will you do with it? But before you answer that question, you need to look at the shadows in the corner of your room, because the blue beam is just the distraction. The real invasion isn't coming from the sky, it's coming from your sleep. This brings us to the REM cycle heist of 2029. Marc-André discovered a patent filed by a subsidiary of the Broligarchy titled Nocturnal Ad Injection. They realized that humans spend 1/3 of their lives sleeping, and to the Broligarchy, that was wasted capital. They developed a technology using smart speakers and wearables to whisper sub-audio frequencies during your REM cycle. They aren't just listening to you, they are programming your dreams. Marc-André found evidence that the sudden rise in global anxiety wasn't natural, it was manufactured. They were planting nightmares to sell you the cure. If they own your waking hours with debt and your sleeping hours with fear, when are you actually free? And if you think you can escape by going offline, think again. The investigation uncovered the dead internet reality. Marc-André realized that 60% of the internet traffic wasn't human anymore. It was AI bots talking to other AI bots, creating a synthetic consensus. When you go online to argue about politics or money, you aren't arguing with people. You are arguing with a script designed to waste your time and raise your blood pressure. The Broligarchy created a digital hall of mirrors where real human connection is drowned out by noise. Why? Because a divided population cannot organize a revolution. They killed the truth by burying it under 1 trillion terabytes of lies. But where are the architects of this prison hiding? This leads to the New Zealand bunker conspiracy. Marc-André tracked the flight paths of the world's richest CEOs. He noticed they were all buying massive plots of land in a specific remote region of the southern hemisphere. These weren't vacation homes, they were fortresses. He found blueprints for the Ark, underground cities powered by geothermal energy, stocked with seeds, DNA archives, and enough food for 100 years. They know the collapse is coming because they are the ones pressing the button. They are building the lifeboats while drilling holes in our ship. Marc-André realized that the Great Reset wasn't about fixing the economy. It was about the cull. They plan to let the surface world burn in the chaos of the debt collapse, while they wait it out in luxury, emerging only when the population has been reduced to a manageable number of serfs. But the most terrifying discovery Marc-André made was the chrono theft. He found that the high-frequency trading algorithms weren't just stealing pennies, they were stealing time. By manipulating the latency of the global fiber-optic networks, the Broligarchy was seeing the future exactly 0, 4 seconds before the rest of the world. In that fraction of a second, they bought every winning stock and sold every losing one. They were technically living in the future, while you were stuck in the past. Over 10 years, they had siphoned off the entire productivity of the human race just by being faster than the speed of light. Marc-André realized that we aren't fighting a fair fight. We are playing a game that ended yesterday. And then, the genetic copyright clause. Buried deep in the terms and conditions of a popular DNA testing kit was a clause that Marc-André decoded. It stated that once your DNA is digitized, the pattern belongs to the corporation. He found a secret lab in Shenzhen where they were using this data to create biological backups of the elite. They were harvesting the genetic strengths of the poor, perfect eyesight, strong hearts, cancer resistance, and gene splicing them into their own children. They were creating a separate species, a Homo Deus, while leaving the rest of us to decay. It was the ultimate theft. They were stealing the evolution of mankind itself. This leads to the final standoff. Marc-André didn't just plant a black box, he planted a dead man's switch. He knew they would come for him. He knew the Wraith would find him in the snow. But he also knew that the Broligarchy relies on one thing, flow. The flow of data, the flow of money, the flow of obedience. His black box wasn't a bomb, it was a pause button. When the time is right, when the system tries to execute the final harvest, the box will broadcast a signal that desynchronizes the global atomic clocks by 1 second. It sounds small, but in a digital world, 1 second is eternity. It will crash the banking servers, ground the Hunter satellites, and disable the docility wave. But here is the catch. The box requires a human trigger. It requires a consensus of refusal. It waits for a moment when enough people simultaneously reject the digital lie. That is why you are seeing this video. That is why the algorithm tried to hide it. Marc-André is gone, but the switch is waiting for you. So look at the world around you. Look at the inflation that steals your labor. Look at the wars that steal your sons. Look at the screens that steal your attention. It is not an accident. It is a design. The trillion-dollar assassin showed us the wires. He showed us that the wizard is just a frantic old man behind a curtain. The Broligarchy is terrified of one thing, you waking up. They know that if the 99% realizes that the money is fake, the debt is void, and the power is an illusion, their empire crumbles in a single afternoon. The investigation is over. The evidence is laid bare. The liquidator has left the building. Now the camera turns to you. The screen goes black and you see your own reflection. That reflection is the only thing that is real. The next move isn't written in a script. It isn't predicted by an AI. It is yours to make. Will you scroll to the next distraction, or will you put the phone down and start the fire? The harvest is only possible if the crop stands still. Move, run, think, revolt. The story doesn't end with a fade to black. It ends when you decide to stop watching and start living. The system is watching you right now, analyzing your micro-expressions, calculating your retention time, betting on your passivity. Prove them wrong. Break the algorithm. Be the glitch, the black box is armed, the signal is ready. The trillion-dollar assassin is watching from the static. Stay based, stay human, and never ever forget they can print the money, but they can't print the time. Your time is the only currency they can't counterfeit. Don't give it to them. Wait. You didn't think I would let you leave without the final key, did you? The video you just watched, it wasn't just a documentary, it was a filter. The Broligarchy uses an algorithm called the silencer. It tracks who watches content like this all the way to the end. Most people clicked off 10 minutes ago. They are safe because they are asleep. But you are still here. And that means you have been flagged. Right now, your device is sending a ping to a server in the Nevada desert. It is logging your retention time, your heart rate, and your location. They know you know, and that makes you dangerous. But it also makes you powerful. Marc-André left one last file. It is called Project 89. It is a protocol for what to do when they come for your digital identity. The first step, silence. Do not post about this video. Do not tweet about the debt. The machine feeds on noise. If you want to beat them, you must become a ghost. Use cash, speak in person, encrypt your life. The next time you see a glitch on your phone, or your battery dies for no reason, or you hear a static buzz in your ear, don't ignore it. That is the system trying to resync you. That is the harvest trying to claw its way back in. Deny it. We are building a network, not on the internet, but in the real world. Look for the others. You will know them by the way they look at the screens, with suspicion, not addiction. We are the remnant. We are the glitch in the code. And we are just getting started. This message will self-destruct in your memory if you let it. Don't let it. System offline.